with less than 24 hours before his execution, Donovan Hale made a request that silenced the room. "I want to see Ember." Not his lawyers, not his family, his dog. The rescue pit bull that vanished 7 months ago, the night of the murder. The prison thought it was impossible. Ember was gone. But that morning, a call came in. They'd found her, bloodied, limping, terrified. And when she finally walked into that courtyard, she didn't just reunite with her owner. She exposed the man who framed him. The air inside Bayshore Penitentiary that morning felt wrong. Guards moved with unusual tension, their boots echoing against concrete that seemed colder than normal. Fluorescent lights buzzed with a frequency that set teeth on edge. Every surface hummed with anticipation, as if the building itself knew something was about to break. In cell D7, Donovan Hale sat on the edge of his cot, shoulders hunched, hands clasped. He wasn't the man who'd graced magazine covers 18 months ago. The warden stared at the request form like it might be a joke. Senior Guard Ramirez shifted his weight uncomfortably. In the corner, Deputy Warden Chen flipped through Donovan's file with increasing confusion. "Your dog," Warden Matthews finally said. "Yes, sir." "Mr. Hale, Ember has not been seen since—" "I know." Donovan's voice was quiet but steady. "But she's all I want." The room fell silent. In 23 years overseeing executions, Matthews had granted final requests for lobster thermidor, rare whiskeys, guitars, priests who never showed, even a specific sunset view. But this? An animal that had been missing for 7 months? "Sir, the dog isn't even in custody," Chin said, scanning the documents. "Animal control has no record. No shelters reported her. She's simply gone." Donovan closed his eyes. "I understand." Something about the way he said it, the resignation mixed with desperate hope, made Ramirez's chest tighten. "We'll see what we can do," Matthews said finally, though his tone carried no promise. The meeting ended. Donovan was escorted back to his cell. But 3 hours later, everything changed. The call came into the prison's main line at 6:47 a.m. "Bayshore Penitentiary, Officer Santos speaking." "Yes, hi. I think I've found a dog that might be important. I saw the news last night about that billionaire's execution today, and he mentioned a pit bull named Ember." Santos sat up straighter. "Ma'am, where are you?" "I'm at the Hale Memorial Fountain downtown. There's a dog here, silver pit bull, looks half-starved. She's got a limp, and her face—" The woman paused. "She's been hurt. Badly. There's dried blood on her coat, and she's got this look in her eyes like she's been through hell." Santos was already waving frantically at his supervisor. "Ma'am, do not let that dog leave. We're sending someone immediately." Within minutes, animal control was dispatched. Within 30 minutes, they had Ember secured in a transport crate. Within 45 minutes, the warden was staring at a traumatized pit bull through chain link, and his carefully ordered world was tilting sideways. "That's her?" he asked the animal control officer. "Microchip matches. Ember, registered to Donovan Hale, age 7, rescue from Singapore shelter." The officer crouched near the crate. "She's malnourished, dehydrated, looks like she's been living rough. Old injuries, newer ones too. Somebody hit her. You can see the bruising around her left eye." Matthews felt something cold settle in his stomach. "How long?" "The vet estimates she's been on the street at least 6 months, maybe longer." 7 months. The entire time Donovan had been incarcerated, Ember had been surviving alone, injured, scared, waiting. "Bring her in," Matthews said. "Under strict supervision, and I want Caleb Yo overseeing the visit." Ramirez, who'd been standing nearby, frowned. Yo, sir, he's been off lately. He was Hale's chief security advisor before the arrest. He knows the players, knows the dynamics. That's final. Ramirez didn't argue, but something uncomfortable twisted in his gut. The air inside Bayshore Penitentiary that morning felt wrong. It wasn't just the execution schedule. The prison had seen plenty of those. It was something else, something that made veteran guards move differently, made their conversations drop to whispers, made the fluorescent lights seem to buzz with unnatural frequency. In the staff rec room, officers debated in tight clusters. It's a security risk, Morrison said, arms crossed. We don't allow animals in maximum security. Not for sentiment, not for anything. It's a dog, Ramirez countered, not a weapon. It's a breach of protocol, the liability alone. He's dying in 12 hours. He's not asking for a pardon. He's not asking to escape. He wants 15 minutes with his dog. It sets a precedent. For what? Compassion? Ramirez snapped. Officer Torres, who'd worked at Bayshore for 32 years, cleared his throat. His quiet voice cut through the tension. Hale has been a model prisoner. No fights, no complaints, no infractions at all. In 7 months, he's caused exactly 0 problems. Torres paused, meeting Morrison's glare. And in those 7 months, he's had 0 visitors, not 1 phone call, not 1 letter. Nobody. The room absorbed that. He's got no one else, Torres continued. Just a dog he raised from a rescue. And if a man who's about to die wants to see the one creature that gave a damn about him, maybe that's not a security risk. Maybe that's just being human. The silence stretched. Morrison looked away first. Matthews had already made the decision anyway. Supervised visit, Southwest Courtyard, 15 minutes maximum. Armed officers at every exit, and I want this airtight. Any sign of trouble, we shut it down. His gaze swept the room. Caleb Yo will supervise. He understands the situation better than anyone. Ramirez's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Word spread through the prison like wildfire. Some guards scoffed, a billionaire playing for sympathy in his final hours. Others felt something uncomfortably close to respect. A few simply wondered what kind of man chose a dog over everything else when facing death. In cell D7, Donovan sat on his cot, barely breathing. His hands were clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. His eyes stared at nothing, seeing everything. Memories of Ember as a scared rescue, all scars and fear, the months it took to earn her trust, the way she'd sleep at the foot of his bed, always between him and the door, protective, loyal. The night she disappeared, he'd been devastated, returning to find Victor's body, blood everywhere, and Ember just gone. In the chaos of his arrest, he'd barely had time to process it. But in the 7 months since, in the endless hours of isolation, her absence had been a physical ache. Now she was coming. Injured, traumatized, but alive. Ramirez appeared at his cell door. Hale, it's time. Donovan stood on shaking legs. His wrists were shackled, protocol even now, but loosely. The chains clinked softly as he moved. They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Guards lined the route, watching silently. Some with curiosity, some with something that looked like pity. A few simply wondered what kind of man chose a dog over everything else when facing death. The Southwest Courtyard rarely saw use, a concrete square flanked by 20-foot walls, monitored by cameras, bordered by razor wire that caught the gray morning light like broken glass. It had been cleared for this. A single metal bench sat in the center, looking small and lonely in all that space. Donovan was positioned near it, Guards formed a perimeter, hands near weapons, eyes alert. The air was cold enough to see breath. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Caleb Yo stood near the main gate, his uniform crisp, his expression unreadable. He'd been Donovan's most trusted advisor once, before the arrest, before everything fell apart. Now he wouldn't meet Donovan's eyes. Donovan barely noticed. His entire focus was on the reinforced gate at the far end of the courtyard. It creaked, slowly opened, and Ember walked through. She looked destroyed. Her silver coat, once gleaming, was now dull and matted. Her ribs showed through her sides. She moved with a pronounced limp favoring her left rear leg. Around her left eye, a purple-black bruise bloomed like a storm cloud, fresh enough that it still looked tender. But her eyes, God, her eyes. They swept the courtyard with sharp intelligence, taking in the guards, the walls, the strange environment, wary, defensive, traumatized. Then they found Donovan. She froze. Every muscle in her body gone locked, her ears shot forward, her nose twisted, testing the air. "M?" Donovan's voice broke on the syllable. The sound hit Ember like an electric shock. Her tail, which had been tucked tight against her body, twitched once, twice, then began to wag in slow, uncertain movements, like she couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. "Hey, girl," Donovan whispered, his eyes flooding. "I'm here. I'm so sorry. Ember bolted. Despite the limp, despite 7 months of starvation and survival, she launched herself across that courtyard like she'd been fired from a cannon. Her paw scrabbled on concrete. Her breath came in desperate whines. Donovan dropped to his knees, chains forgotten. They collided. Ember crashed into him with enough force to nearly knock him over. She pressed herself against his chest, her entire body trembling so violently that Donovan could feel it in his bones. She whined, high, desperate sounds that didn't even sound like a dog, more like grief made audible. I know, baby, I'm here. I'm so sorry. I couldn't." His words dissolved into sobs. For 90 seconds, the courtyard held its breath. Even Morrison, who'd argued against this, felt his throat tighten. Ramirez looked away, blinking hard. Torres didn't bother hiding the tear that tracked down his weathered face. This was why Donovan had chosen her over everything else. This moment, this pure, uncomplicated love. No judgment. No questions about guilt or innocence, just reunion. Then Ember stiffened. It happened so suddenly that Donovan almost didn't register it. 1 second, she was pressed against him, trembling with joy. The next, every muscle in her body had gone rigid. Her head snapped up. Her nose twitched, catching a scent. And deep in her chest, a sound began, low, primal, furious. A growl. "M?" Donovan's hand stroked her head. But Ember wasn't listening. Her eyes had locked onto something across the courtyard. Her lips peeled back from her teeth. The growl escalated into something Donovan had never heard from her before. Pure, focused rage. The guards tensed. "What's wrong with the dog?" someone asked. Donovan followed Ember's gaze. She was staring at Caleb Yo. Caleb, who'd gone statue still near the gate. Caleb, whose face had drained of color. Caleb, whose hands had curled into fists behind his back. Caleb, Donovan's wife carried across the space, confused. "Caleb, does she know you?" Caleb's jaw worked. We've met before, obviously, but..." Ember's snarl cut him off. She lunged forward, straining against Donovan's hold, her attention utterly fixed on the security officer. "Easy, girl, easy. Donovan tried to calm her, but Ember wasn't having it. She barked, sharp, accusatory, and lunged again. Ramirez stepped forward, his instincts firing. Yo, stay where you are. I'm not doing anything. Then why is she losing her mind at you specifically? Ramirez's eyes narrowed. The courtyard had gone from emotional reunion to crackling tension in seconds. Guards shifted positions, hands moved toward weapons. Ember kept barking, her focus laser-sharp on Caleb, and then she did something strange. She stopped barking, started sniffing. Her nose pointed directly at Caleb's right wrist, the wrist he kept tucked behind his back. Caleb, Ramirez said slowly, his voice dropping into that dangerous calm that preceded action. Show me your hands. This is ridiculous. Show me your hands. The silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Slowly, Caleb brought his hands forward. His right wrist was wrapped in a fresh white bandage, but at the edge, where the gauze ended, angry red teeth marks were clearly visible. Bite marks. Fresh ones. Ramirez's blood went cold. That's from her, Donovan breathed, staring at Ember with dawning horror. That's from Ember. Caleb's face twisted. I can explain it. When? Ramirez demanded, already moving forward. When did she bite you? It was when, Caleb. The world seemed to tilt, because there was only one answer that made sense, only one timeline that fit. Ember had been missing since the night of the murder, the same night Victor Kim died, the same night Donovan was arrested, and Caleb Yo, Donovan's trusted security advisor, had just been caught with fresh bite marks from a dog that had supposedly vanished 7 months ago. Ember barked again, sharp and insistent. Her eyes hadn't left Caleb's belt. Something glinted there, something small and metal, barely visible, tucked into Caleb's belt buckle. Ramirez saw it, moved fast, grabbed Caleb's belt before he could react, and yanked the object free. It was a ring. An expensive platinum ring with an engraved inscription inside. DH, Build with Purpose. Donovan's ring. The ring he had been wearing the night of Victor's death. The ring that had disappeared from the crime scene. The ring that prosecutors claimed Donovan had thrown away to hide evidence of guilt. The ring that had been missing for 7 months. And it had just been found on Caleb Yo. The courtyard exploded into chaos. Don't move, Ramirez barked, hand on his weapon. Nobody moves. Guards converged. Caleb stumbled backwards, his face a mask of panic. That's not... I can explain. It was evidence. They gave it to me too. Bullshit, Ramirez snarled. Evidence is logged, bagged, and locked in a vault. This is personal property, and it's in your possession. Donovan stared at the ring like it was a ghost. His voice came out strangled. You were there. You were at the house that night. Caleb's composure finally shattered. Donovan, you told me you weren't. You told the police you were off duty. You gave them your alibi and they... His voice broke. You helped them arrest me. Ember barked again, vicious and triumphant. The warden came striding into the courtyard, his face thunderous. What the hell is going on? Ramirez held up the ring. Sir, we have a problem. Matthew looked at the ring, at Caleb's bandaged wrist, at Ember, still snarling with focused hatred, at Donovan, whose expression had gone from grief to shock to something that looked like hope for the first time in 7 months. The warden's voice was steel. We were halting the execution immediately. Yo, you're in custody. Ramirez, get investigators down here now, and somebody get that dog to a vet. She just became the most important witness in this prison. Guards grabbed Caleb. He tried to pull away, still stammering excuses that no one was listening to anymore. Donovan collapsed onto the bench, his shackled hands shaking. Ember immediately pressed against his legs, her aggression melting away now that Caleb was restrained. She looked up. The air inside Bayshore Penitentiary that morning felt wrong. Guards moved with unusual tension, their boots echoing against concrete that seemed colder than normal. Fluorescent lights buzzed with a frequency that set teeth on edge. Every surface hummed with anticipation, as if the building itself knew something was about to break. In cell D7, Donovan Hale sat on the edge of his cot, shoulders hunched, hands clasped. He wasn't the man who'd graced magazine covers 18 months ago. The warden stared at the request form like it might be a joke. Senior Guard Ramirez shifted his weight uncomfortably. In the corner, Deputy Warden Chen flipped through Donovan's file with increasing confusion. "Your dog," Warden Matthews finally said. "Yes, sir." "Mr. Hale, Ember has not been seen since—" "I know." Donovan's voice was quiet but steady. "But she's all I want." The room fell silent. In 23 years overseeing executions, Matthews had granted final requests for lobster thermidor, rare whiskeys, guitars, priests who never showed, even a specific sunset view. But this? An animal that had been missing for 7 months? "Sir, the dog isn't even in custody," Chin said, scanning the documents. "Animal control has no record. No shelters reported her. She's simply gone." Donovan closed his eyes. "I understand." Something about the way he said it, the resignation mixed with desperate hope, made Ramirez's chest tighten. "We'll see what we can do," Matthews said finally, though his tone carried no promise. The meeting ended. Donovan was escorted back to his cell. But 3 hours later, everything changed. The call came into the prison's main line at 6:47 a.m. "Bayshore Penitentiary, Officer Santos speaking." "Yes, hi. I think I've found a dog that might be important. I saw the news last night about that billionaire's execution today, and he mentioned a pit bull named Ember." Santos sat up straighter. "Ma'am, where are you?" "I'm at the Hale Memorial Fountain downtown. There's a dog here, silver pit bull, looks half-starved. She's got a limp, and her face—" The woman paused. "She's been hurt. Badly. There's dried blood on her coat, and she's got this look in her eyes like she's been through hell." Santos was already waving frantically at his supervisor. "Ma'am, do not let that dog leave. We're sending someone immediately." Within minutes, animal control was dispatched. Within 30 minutes, they had Ember secured in a transport crate. Within 45 minutes, the warden was staring at a traumatized pit bull through chain link, and his carefully ordered world was tilting sideways. "That's her?" he asked the animal control officer. "Microchip matches. Ember, registered to Donovan Hale, age 7, rescue from Singapore shelter." The officer crouched near the crate. "She's malnourished, dehydrated, looks like she's been living rough. Old injuries, newer ones too. Somebody hit her. You can see the bruising around her left eye." Matthews felt something cold settle in his stomach. "How long?" "The vet estimates she's been on the street at least 6 months, maybe longer." 7 months. The entire time Donovan had been incarcerating, Ember had been surviving alone, injured, scared, waiting. "Bring her in," Matthews said. "Under strict supervision, and I want Caleb Yo overseeing the visit." Ramirez, who'd been standing nearby, frowned. "Yo, sir, he's been off lately." He was Hale's chief security advisor before the arrest. He knows the players, knows the dynamics. That's final. Ramirez didn't argue, but something uncomfortable twisted in his gut. The air inside Bayshore Penitentiary that morning felt wrong. It wasn't just the execution schedule. The prison had seen plenty of those. It was something else, something that made veteran guards move differently, made their conversations drop to whispers, made the fluorescent lights seem to buzz with unnatural frequency. In the staff rec room, officers debated in tight clusters. "It's a security risk," Morrison said, arms crossed. "We don't allow animals in maximum security. Not for sentiment, not for anything." "It's a dog," Ramirez countered, "not a weapon. It's a breach of protocol. The liability alone. He's dying in 12 hours. He's not asking for a pardon. He's not asking to escape. He wants 15 minutes with his dog. It sets a precedent." For what? Compassion? Ramirez snapped. Officer Torres, who'd worked at Bayshore for 32 years, cleared his throat. His quiet voice cut through the tension. Hale has been a model prisoner. No fights, no complaints, no infractions at all. In 7 months, he's caused exactly 0 problems. Torres paused, meeting Morrison's glare. And in those 7 months, he's had 0 visitors, not 1 phone call, not 1 letter. Nobody. The room absorbed that. He's got no one else, Torres continued. Just a dog he raised from a rescue. And if a man who's about to die wants to see the one creature that gave a damn about him, maybe that's not a security risk. Maybe that's just being human. The silence stretched. Morrison looked away first. Matthews had already made the decision anyway. Supervised visit, Southwest Courtyard, 15 minutes maximum. Armed officers at every exit, and I want this airtight. Any sign of trouble, we shut it down. His gaze swept the room. Caleb Yo will supervise. He understands the situation better than anyone. Then why is she? Ember snarled, a sound so vicious that 3 guards simultaneously reached for their weapons. Control the animal, Morrison barked. Don't touch her. Donovan's voice cracked like a whip. The first time since his arrest that he'd spoken with real authority, real power. He wrapped both arms around Ember protectively. She's not dangerous. She sure as hell looks dangerous. Not to me. Donovan's eyes were locked on Caleb now, seeing something he'd missed before, something he'd been too broken to notice. You know you. Caleb shifted his weight. I told you. No. Donovan's voice dropped. You know you. Ember lunged. Donovan's grip barely held her back. She strained against him, claws squabbling on concrete, every ounce of her depleted strength focused on reaching Caleb Yo. Guards moved to intervene. Stay back, Ramirez ordered, his hand raised. Something was happening here, something important, and his instinct screamed not to interrupt it. Ember's barking turned frantic, sharp, accusatory bursts that sounded less like aggression and more like testimony. And that's when Ramirez saw it. Caleb's right wrist, the one he kept tucked behind his back, partially hidden by his uniform sleeve. A flash of white bandage. And at the edge, where gauze met skin, angry red puncture marks. Bite marks. Fresh ones. Caleb, Ramirez said slowly, taking a step forward. Show me your wrist. This is ridiculous. Show me your wrist. The courtyard had gone silent except for Ember's continued growling. Every eye was fixed on Caleb Yo. Slowly, like a man moving through quicksand, Caleb brought his right arm forward. The bandage was professional, clean, recently changed. But the teeth marks were unmistakable. 4 deep punctures in a perfect canine pattern, the tissue around them still inflamed and angry. Donovan stared at those marks, then at Ember, then back at Caleb, his face drained of all color. You were at my house, you whispered, the night Victor died. You were there. No, you told me you were off duty. You told the police you were at home. You helped build my alibi, and you were lying. You were there. Caleb's carefully constructed mask finally cracked. Panic flashed across his features, just for a second, but it was enough. I can explain. When did she bite you? Ramirez demanded, closing the distance. When, Caleb? This isn't what it... Ember barked again. 3 sharp, insistent bursts. But she wasn't looking at Caleb's face anymore. She was staring at his belt. Her nose pointed like a compass needle at something metallic catching the light, something small and silver tucked into his belt buckle, barely visible against the black leather. Ramirez saw it. His blood went cold. What is that? He asked quietly. Nothing. What is that? Ramirez moved fast, grabbed Caleb's belt before he could react, and yanked the object free. It caught the light as it came loose. A ring. Platinum. Expensive, with an inscription barely visible on the inner band. Ramirez turned it slowly, reading the engraved words. DH, build with purpose. The world stopped. Every guard in the yard recognized it. They'd all seen the evidence photos, all heard the prosecution's theory. Donovan Hale's ring, the one he'd been wearing the night of the murder, the one that vanished from the crime scene, the one prosecutors claimed he'd thrown away to hide evidence of guilt, the one that had been missing for 7 months. And it had just been pulled from Caleb Yo's belt. Ramirez looked up slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You son of a bitch." Caleb's face twisted, fear and rage and desperation all colliding at once. He lunged backward, but Morrison was already there, grabbing his shoulders. "Don't move. Get your hands off me! Cuff him!" Ramirez barked. "Now!" The courtyard erupted into controlled chaos. Guards converged. Caleb fought. Not hard, but wild, panicked, the fight of a tracked animal. Donovan sat frozen on the bench, Ember pressed against his legs, staring at the ring in Ramirez's hand like it was a ghost made solid. The warden's voice came through the radio, sharp as breaking glass. "What the hell is happening down there?" Ramirez held up the ring toward the observation window. "Sir," he said quietly, "we need to halt the execution. Right now." Warden Matthews stared at the ring through the observation window like it might disappear if he blinked. His hand reached for the radio, then stopped, then reached again. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "That's impossible," he finally said, his voice hollow. "That ring is logged as missing evidence. Case file 2847HK. Status? Unrecovered." "Well, it just got recovered," Ramirez said flatly, still holding it up to the light. "Wanna explain that, yo?" Caleb was breathing hard now, pressed between 2 guards. Sweat ran down his temples despite the cold. His eyes darted frantically, from the ring to Ember, to the exits that were all suddenly blocked. It was evidence. They gave it to me for processing. I must have forgotten to." "Bullshit," Morrison stepped forward, his earlier skepticism replaced by cold fury. "Evidence is logged, bagged, sealed, and stored. It doesn't end up tucked in someone's belt buckle 7 months later. Unless that someone took it from the crime scene," Ramirez added quietly. The words hung in the air like smoke. Caleb's face went through a series of rapid transformations. Denial, calculation, fear, then something that looked almost like relief. The relief of a man who had been carrying a weight too heavy for too long. "You don't understand. Then help us understand." Ramirez moved closer. "Why do you have Donovan's ring? Why does his dog have your wrist in her teeth? And why the hell were you at the Hale estate the night Victor Kim died?" Ember's growls intensified, low, continuous, primal. She pressed against Donovan's legs, her body rigid, her eyes never leaving Caleb. It wasn't just aggression. It was recognition, memory, trauma. She was reliving something. And suddenly, so was Donovan. The memory hit him like a punch. The night of Victor's death, the estate. He'd been in his study, reviewing contracts. His head had felt wrong, heavy, foggy, like his thoughts were moving through water. He'd poured himself a drink earlier, whiskey, his favorite bottle. Had it tasted off? He couldn't remember. Ember had started barking, frantic, desperate barking, from downstairs. Not her usual alert bark. This was fear. He'd stood up too fast. The room tilted. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. "Em?" he called out, his voice slurring. "What's wrong?" The barking escalated. Then came other sounds. Victor's voice raised in anger. "You can't be serious." Another voice, lower, familiar. Caleb's voice. "You're going to ruin everything." Donovan had stumbled toward the stairs, his vision blurred. He'd grabbed the railing, trying to focus. A crash, glass breaking, a thud that shook the floor. Ember's barking turned to snarling. A man's shout, Caleb's shout, high with pain. "Get off me!" Then the sound of a door slamming, footsteps running. By the time Donovan reached the bottom of the stairs, his legs had given out. He'd collapsed against the wall, consciousness fading in and out like a bad signal. The last thing he remembered was blood. So much blood. And Ember, gone. The police had arrived minutes later, found him there, disoriented and confused, Victor's body cooling in the next room. They called it shock, guilt, the behavior of a killer. But he'd been drugged, and Caleb had been there. Donovan's eyes snapped open, the memory reassembling itself like shattered glass finding its original shape. "You drugged me," he whispered. Caleb flinched. "You drugged me," Donovan said louder, his voice climbing. "The whiskey. You brought me that bottle. You said it was a gift. And then you killed Victor while I was barely conscious upstairs?" "No, you drugged me," Donovan said louder, his voice climbing. "The whiskey. You brought me that bottle. You said it was a gift. And then you killed Victor while I was barely conscious upstairs?" "No. Ember attacked you. That's how you got the bite. And when you ran," Donovan's voice broke. "She chased you. She disappeared trying to stop you." The courtyard had gone silent except for the distant wail of sirens growing closer. Matthew's voice crackled through the radio, sharp and commanding. "Halt the execution. Full stop. Get forensics down there now." The words seemed to echo off the concrete walls. Outside the prison, news vans were already gathering. Social media had exploded. Someone had leaked fragments of what was happening. Hashtags were forming. The world was watching. Inside, chaos erupted in controlled bursts. Detectives arrived within minutes, their faces grim and professional. Evidence bags appeared, cameras flashed. Caleb was read his rights while still trying to construct the explanations that no longer held water. "I want my lawyer." "You'll get one," the lead detective said coldly, "right after we book you." Ramirez stayed close to Donovan, who seemed to be in shock. Ember refused to move from his side, her body pressed protectively against his leg. "You okay?" Ramirez asked quietly. Donovan shook his head. For 7 months, I thought I was going insane, that I'd blacked out, done something horrible." His voice cracked. "I couldn't remember. The drugs made everything—" "We'll figure it out," Ramirez promised. "All of it." The interrogation rooms filled quickly. Statements were taken. Evidence was logged, properly this time. The ring was photographed from every angle, its inscription documented, chain of custody reestablished. In a holding cell, Caleb sat with his head in his hands, his career in freedom and carefully constructed lies all crumbling around him. In the courtyard, Donovan sat on the bench with Ember, watching the sun break through clouds for the first time in what felt like years. Then Ramirez's phone buzzed. He looked at the message and his face went pale. "What?" Donovan asked. Ramirez looked up slowly. "The IT forensics team just recovered something from your estate's server, a hidden audio file from the night of the murder." Donovan's breath stopped. Someone deleted it from the main system, but it auto-backed up to a redundant drive that nobody checked. Ramirez's jaw tightened. The prosecutors never found it because someone with system access scrubbed it from the primary logs. Someone like Caleb? Donovan breathed. "He had full access to my security systems." "Yeah." Ramirez looked toward where Caleb was being processed. "They're pulling it up now." Full audio from the East Wing, the entire confrontation. The message on his phone updated. "Audio file recovered. Content confirmed. This changes everything. Ramirez looked at Donovan. Whatever's on that recording, he said quietly, it's about to blow this case wide open. The interrogation room was smaller than Donovan expected. Bare walls, a metal table, harsh fluorescent lighting that made everyone look half dead. He sat in a plastic chair that creaked under his weight, though someone had removed his shackles. Ember lay at his feet, her head resting on his shoe, her breathing finally steady. But her eyes remained alert, tracking every movement in the room. 4 people crowded the space: lead detective Chen, Ramirez, the warden, and a tech specialist hunched over a laptop. The air felt compressed, heavy with anticipation. "Mr. Hale," Detective Chen said, her voice professionally neutral, "we're about to play the recovered audio file. It's difficult to hear. Are you ready?" Donovan's throat was too tight to speak. He nodded. Chen signaled to the tech specialist. A click, static, then voices. "Victor Kim. Absolutely insane if you think I'm going to let this slide." Caleb Yo. "Victor, just listen. I've been listening for 3 months while you siphon money from our accounts. 2.4 million, Caleb. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" Donovan's breath caught. Ember's head lifted slightly. "It was an investment opportunity. I was going to pay it back." "You were stealing from us, from Donovan, from everyone who trusted you. Lower your voice. Why? Afraid someone will hear? Good. Donovan needs to know what you've been doing behind his back. I'm calling him right now." "No, you're not." A pause. Too long, too tense. "Victor, get out of my way." "Caleb, I can't let you do that." The sound of a struggle, furniture scraping, glass shattering, Victor's voice rising in alarm. What are you? Stop!" A heavy thud, a gasp. Then Ember's barking, distant but frantic, muffled by walls and doors. Caleb, breathing hard. "Shut up! Shut up!" Another crash. Ember's barking escalated to snarling. "Get off me!" A yelp, Ember's yelp, followed by the sound of something hitting a wall. A door slamming, running footsteps. Then silence. Just Ember whimpering in the background. After a long pause, new footsteps, slower, unsteady. Donovan's voice, slurred, confused. "Victor, what happened? Victor!" More silence. The sound of someone collapsing. Shallow breathing. Then Caleb's voice again, carefully controlled now. "Donovan, wake up. Oh God, Victor's dead. Donovan, what did you do?" The recording ended. The room stayed silent for 5 full seconds. Ember was growling, that same low, primal sound from the courtyard. Her fur along her spine stood rigid. Her eyes were fixed on the door as if she could see through it to where Caleb was being held. Donovan's face had gone white. He staged it. He killed Victor, then waited for me to stumble downstairs. His voice cracked. "He made me think I did it." The memory came flooding back with brutal clarity now. Waking up on the floor, blood everywhere. Caleb kneeling over Victor's body, his face twisted with manufactured horror. "Donovan, what happened? What did you do?" I can't remember." "Your ring. Where's your ring?" Patting his hands frantically, the ring was gone. I don't know. I must have... The police are coming. Donovan, the police are coming and you need to..." But by then, the drugs had pulled him under again. And when he woke in a hospital bed 12 hours later, handcuffed to the rail, Caleb's narrative had already taken root. The evidence was overwhelming. His prints were on the murder weapon. Of course they were. It was his letter opener. He'd been found at the scene. His ring had vanished. And he couldn't remember anything clearly. Even his own lawyers had looked at him with doubt. So he'd stopped fighting. If he'd killed Victor in some drugged-out blackout, then maybe he deserved what was coming. But he hadn't. Caleb had. "He framed me," Donovan said louder now, anger breaking through shock. "He murdered Victor, drugged me, staged the scene, and framed me." "The ring," Ramirez added quietly. He pocketed that night, kept it as insurance, or he paused, or a trophy. Detective Chen was already on her phone. Get Yo into interrogation room 2, now. Caleb looked smaller in the interrogation room, stripped of his uniform, wearing civilian clothes that hung awkwardly on his frame. His hands were cuffed to the table, his eyes were red-rimmed and darting. You can't prove. We have the audio, Chen said flatly, dropping the file in front of him. Every word, every sound, including you killing Victor Kim. Caleb's face twitched. We have the ring you took from Donovan. We have the bite marks from his dog. We have your deleted security logs. She leaned forward. We have everything. For a long moment, Caleb just stared at the table. Then he laughed, a broken, bitter sound. You want to know the truth? His voice came out raw. They were cutting me out, both of them, restructuring the company, bringing in outside management. After everything I'd done for them, 10 years of my life, they were going to fire me. So you embezzled. I took what I was owed. Caleb slammed his cuffed hands on the table, and when Victor found out, he threatened to destroy me, ruin my reputation, press charges. He didn't give me a choice. You murdered him. I defended myself. You drugged Donovan and framed him for it. Caleb's momentum faltered. His shoulders sagged. I panicked. The dog attacked me. I barely got away. And then Donovan came downstairs and I realized... He stopped. It was so easy. He was barely conscious, confused. I just had to plant the idea. And Ember? Ramirez asked from the corner. She ran. I tried to find her later, but Caleb's voice dropped. I figured she'd die out there eventually. A pit bull alone in the city? He never thought she'd survive 7 months. Never thought she'd come back. Never thought a dog would be his undoing. Ember's growl echoed from the adjacent room where Donovan watched through one-way glass. That same furious, protective sound she'd made that night, trying to save Victor, trying to stop Caleb. A dog who refused to forget. Get him out of my sight, Chen said. 2 officers hauled Caleb to his feet. As they dragged him toward the door, he looked back at the glass, knowing Donovan was there, watching. I'm sorry, Caleb said, his voice hollow. I never wanted... Save it for your trial, Chen cut him off. The door slammed shut. In the observation room, Donovan collapsed forward, his head in his hands, Ember immediately pressed against his legs, whining softly. He pulled her close, burying his face in her fur, his whole body shaking with sobs he'd been holding back for 7 months. The door opened. Warden Matthews stepped in, his weathered face softer than Donovan had ever seen it. Hale, he said quietly. Donovan looked up, tears streaming. Matthews' voice was steady, final, and carried the weight of absolution. You're going home. The crowd outside Bayshore Penitentiary had tripled in size since dawn. News vans lined every available space. Satellite dishes pointed skyward like mechanical flowers seeking sun. Reporters jockeyed for position behind police barriers, their voices creating a constant buzz of anticipation. Cameramen perched on stepladders, lenses trained on the main gate. But the most striking change was the signs. Where yesterday there had been protesters demanding justice for Victor Kim, calling for Donovan's execution, now there were different messages scrawled on hastily made cardboard. Justice for Hale, free the innocent man, Ember the hero. Public opinion had turned on a dime. Social media had exploded overnight. The hashtag Ember Revelation was trending worldwide. Someone had already started a GoFundMe for Ember's medical care that had raised $2 million in 4 hours. The world loves a redemption story, especially one with a dog. Inside the prison, in a processing room that smelled of bleach and old coffee, Donovan signed papers with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Personal effects, the clerk said monotonously, sliding a clear bag across the counter. 1 wallet, 1 watch, 1 phone, batteries dead, 1 set of keys. Donovan stared at the items like artifacts from another life. His watch had stopped at 11:47 p.m., the moment they confiscated it 7 months ago. His phone was an outdated model now. The tech world had moved on without him. "You're free to go, Mr. Hale." The words should have felt triumphant. Instead, they felt surreal, untethered, like he might wake up any second back in his cell. Ramirez appeared in the doorway, no longer in uniform, but civilian clothes. Jeans, a simple jacket. His shift had ended an hour ago, but he stayed. "Ready?" he asked quietly. Donovan looked down at Ember, who sat pressed against his leg. Someone had given her a bath and treated her wounds. A veterinarian had examined her, declared her malnourished, but remarkably resilient. Her limp was permanent, scar tissue from an old injury, but she was alive. She looked up at him with those intelligent brown eyes, tail wagging slowly. "Yeah," Donovan said, "I'm ready." The walk from processing to the main gate took 4 minutes. 4 minutes that felt like crossing from one world into another. Guards lined the corridor, not as captors now, but witnesses. Some nodded respectfully. Torres reached out to shake Donovan's hand as he passed. "Good luck out there, Hale." "Thank you for everything." The corridor opened into a larger holding area. Through the reinforced glass windows, Donovan could see the crowd beyond the gates. Hundreds of people, thousands maybe, all waiting for him. "There's a back exit," Ramirez offered, "if you want to avoid—" "No," Donovan said quietly. "I walked in through the front. I'm walking out the same way." Ramirez nodded, a small smile crossing his face. "Fair enough." The inner gate buzzed open, then the middle security door, then the final checkpoint. And finally, the main gate began to swing outward, its heavy steel hinges groaning after years of opening only for prison transports and official vehicles. Donovan stepped through. The world hit him all at once. Sound, the roar of the crowd, car horns, helicopter rotors overhead. Light, raw sunlight, unfiltered by bars or bulletproof glass, hitting his face with almost physical force. Air, free air, carrying the smell of car exhaust and street food and rain-wet pavement instead of disinfectant and metal. He stopped just beyond the threshold and simply breathed. Ember pressed against his leg, her tail wagging harder now. She could feel it too, the difference between confinement and freedom. The crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, camera flashes creating a strobe effect that made him squint. Reporters surged against the barriers, shouting questions that blurred into incomprehensible noise. "Mr. Hale, how does it feel to be free? Donovan, will you press charges against Caleb Yo? What's next for Hale Industries? Mr. Hale, over here." Donovan ignored them all. He turned, knelt down on the wet pavement, and wrapped both arms around Ember. She burrowed into him, whining softly, her whole body trembling with emotion that transcended species. Pure joy, pure relief, pure love. "We made it, girl," he whispered into her fur, his voice breaking. Cameras captured the moment from every angle. By evening, the image would be everywhere. A man in civilian clothes provided by the prison, kneeling on concrete, embracing a scarred pit bull while the world watched. The photo would win awards. But in that moment, none of it mattered except the solid warmth of Ember's body and the impossible fact of freedom. The news cycle moved fast. By afternoon, Caleb Yo's arrest was the top story on every major network. Legal analysts dissected the case. Former colleagues gave interviews expressing shock. The original prosecutors faced calls for investigation into how they'd missed the audio file, how they'd built a case with such glaring holes. Hale Industries' stock had plummeted during Donovan's incarceration. Now it rallied hard, climbing 34% in a single trading day. Board members who'd distanced themselves suddenly wanted meetings. Shareholders who demanded his removal now begged for his return. The public narrative shifted from scandal to inspiration. Think pieces appeared. How one dog's loyalty exposed the killer. The Ember revelation, when animals know what humans miss. Justice and the unconditional love of rescue dogs. Ember became an overnight icon. Offers poured in. Book deals, movie rights, endorsement opportunities. A toy company wanted to create an Ember action figure. A pet food brand offered $5 million for her to appear in commercials. Donovan's assistant fielded 100 requests a day and declined them all. 3 days after his release, Donovan sat in a private suite at a medical center outside the city. Not for himself, for Ember. The veterinary team had run comprehensive tests: malnutrition, dehydration, old fractures that had healed poorly, dental damage, psychological trauma. "She's a fighter," the vet said, reviewing x-rays. "Most dogs wouldn't have survived a week on the streets. She lasted 7 months." "She was looking for me," Donovan said quietly. The vet glanced at him, saw the certainty in his eyes, and didn't argue. "Well, she found you, and with proper care, she'll make a full recovery. The limp will stay, that tendon damage is permanent, but she'll be healthy." Donovan nodded, relief flooding through him. That night, in a rented apartment far from the media circus, far from the business demands and legal proceedings and public scrutiny, Donovan sat on the floor with Ember sprawled across his lap. She was already gaining weight. Her coat was starting to shine again. But more importantly, the fear in her eyes was fading, replaced by something that looked like peace. He stroked her head slowly, rhythmically, feeling her breathing slow into sleep. "You didn't just save my life. You saved the truth. You saved everything." Ember's tail thumped once against the floor. Acknowledgement, perhaps, or just contentment. Outside, the city hummed with life. Somewhere, lawyers were building cases, journalists were writing stories. His business empire was slowly stabilizing. The world was moving forward, as it always did. But in this small, quiet room, there was only this: a man and his dog, both survivors, both finally safe. Donovan looked toward the window where late afternoon light painted everything gold. He almost lost this, the simple pleasure of watching sunlight fade, of feeling Ember's warmth, and of choosing what to do with tomorrow. For the first time in 7 months, he felt something other than fear or despair. He felt peace. Ember shifted in his lap, her head resting more heavily against his chest. Her breathing deepened into full sleep, the ultimate sign of trust. Vulnerable, relaxed, safe. Donovan closed his eyes, his hand still moving in slow circles through her fur. He whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me." Outside, traffic hummed. Sirens wailed in the distance. The world turned. But here, in this moment, there was only stillness. And so the man the world's condemned walked home with the only soul who knew him all along.